Back to the deep dive. Today, we are heading somewhere pretty unusual, deep down into, well, let's just say the messiest corners of fictional lore we've encountered in a while. We've got these excerpts detailing two very unconventional anti-heroes. They operate in this fictional place called Sewage City. Grim stuff.
Oh, absolutely. This material it's definitely specific, and you can tell it's designed to get a reaction, a strong one. We're talking about characters who are purely grotesque, really.
Yeah.
So our job today, our mission has to be laser focused. We're looking at the text provided, strictly analyzing its narrative structure,
Yeah.
and how these two figures function in contrast to each
Oh,
other.
exactly. Shipman and Turdman. We have to treat the fictional details as, like, the facts we're discussing.
Precisely. We're unpacking the differences between them.
Yeah, the goal is to understand how this source material uses the whole idea of filth, but to define these radically different takes on, well, I hesitate to even use the word justice for both of them. We've got one guy who sort of sticks to the rules of a traditional hero structure, even though he's disgusting. And then there's this other figure who is just absolute pure chaos.
A stark contrast.
So maybe let's start with the one who still seems to be aiming for something like conventional heroism, Shipman.
Right. Shipman, his origin, Stan Sludge, before the transformation. It's a direct parody, a really foul one, of that classic superhero accident trope.
Mild-mannered janitor.
Exactly. Stan Sludge just doing his job, and then bam, he slips. Plunges right into a vat of experimental bio-goo.
And this is during some illegal dumping operation at the city's waste treatment plant, of all places.
Yep. Talk about a toxic workplace incident. It doesn't get much more literal than that.
And what comes out the other side, the powers he gets are perfectly, horribly suited to that sewer environment, aren't they?
Oh, completely. He can generate, apparently, an endless supply of this noxious, semi-sentient sludge. The text says he shapes it into weapons, like blunt instruments, shields.
And even these temporary, questionable allies, what were they called? Sludge pups?
That's the one, sludge pups. But what's interesting, or maybe disturbing, is how the source material spins his repulsive traits into actual advantages.
Like the smell.
Yeah, his stench isn't just bad. It's described as a potent biological weapon. It disorients people instantly. And crucially, for operating in Sewage City, his body can liquefy.
So he can get through tiny cracks, pipes, master infiltrator stuff.
He's literally the only one truly adapted to survive, let alone operate, in that city's underbelly, according to this text.
But why make him so repellent visually? I mean, the mission seems pure enough, clean up the literal and metaphorical corruption, but the patched-up hazmat suit, the questionable brown cape, what's the text suggesting there?
That seems to be a core point the source is making, right? About appearances. It really emphasizes that despite this foul exterior, his heart is supposedly pure. It's the classic good guy motivation wrapped in the absolute worst aesthetic imaginable for this world.
So he's fighting actual villains, like standard superhero fare.
Oh, yeah. He's got nemesis.
Yeah.
There's the Clog, described as a maniacal plumber turned warlord trying to flood the city, and Madame Methane, a chemist using explosive gases. It follows that template. Hero versus villain.
And he has a catchphrase.
He does. As he's fighting these figures, he apparently yells, "Time to take out the trash."
Okay. On the nose, given the circumstances.
Very. And then there's the weakness. This is where the source really leans into the comic absurdity of it all. Every hero needs one, but Shipman's is just wonderfully mundane, hilarious even.
What is it?
Industrial strength air fresheners.
No. Really?
Yep. He can handle toxic sludge, explosions, methane gas.
Yeah.
But a spritz of, like, lemon zest or ocean breeze apparently neutralizes his powers completely, takes him right out.
Wow. Okay, that definitely grounds the absurdity. It confirms they're deliberately playing with the conventions, twisting them. So he's this hero nobody wants around.
Exactly. People shun him, the text says, because of the smell, the methods. But they can't deny he gets results. He is fundamentally this repulsive force, but for civic order.
Okay, so Shipman represents order, even if it's disgusting order.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
But if Shipman is the argument for order wearing a, let's say, grotesque suit,
Yeah.
the second source we have just throws that whole idea out the window.
Right. Turdman.
Turdman isn't grotesque for a purpose, like Shipman. The grotesqueness is the point. And that's the huge tonal shift we need to prepare for.
Okay, let's be really clear here as we transition. We're moving from something that had elements of perverse comedy almost into intentional, unchained horror. The Turdman excerpts, they're in separate texts. Lyrics, apparently, they seem deliberately designed to shock. They mix this fictional gore with some very volatile, real-world references. So before we get into the specifics, just repeating, we have to maintain strict analytical distance. We are reporting on the author's narrative choices here, not endorsing the content or the message.
Absolutely critical. Okay, Turdman's origin.
Yeah.
It's immediate, harsh. There's no Stan Sludge figure here, no accident. He's described as being just, born from the instantly. The text says, brown babies born from the crap, no lie, plopped out, steam and molded from filth.
So not an accident victim, more like a primal product of the sewer itself. A fecal freak, a turd machine, they call him.
Those are the terms used, yes. And there is zero heroic ambition. None. Turdman's actions and his gang, the Turds, are explicitly violent, criminal. This source doesn't pull any punches describing a truly lawless existence.
What kind of actions are we talking about?
Well, the excerpts detail extreme violence, drug dealing, things like cruising the block in a crap mobile ride, performing what's called drive-by dumping. Yeah. And it gets more specific and disturbing. The sources mention targeted drug activities, selling crack to kiddos straight from the trap, and the text adds the impact, leaving them hooked, eyes glazed and dead.
Okay. That's incredibly bleak. And the violence itself, you mentioned gore.
Profoundly gory, yes.
Yeah.
While the origin might sound almost cartoonish in its extremity, the violence described is visceral. We read things like guts spilling out like overflow sewage. And there's a particularly graphic description of a throat slashing. Slash your throat deep, blood spraying and blind. The text notes the Turds react with callous indifference, even taking pictures.
Right. And this is where the source material, as you said, makes that very conscious, very provocative choice. It defines Turdman's world, his lawless law, by bringing in these highly sensitive, real-world phrases.
Exactly. The text incorporates phrases tied to societal trauma and police violence. It uses terms like George Floyd yell and knees on necks within the description of the violence happening in their chaotic fictional world.
That's a deliberate move. It forces the reader, you, to confront these real-world horrors, but they're placed directly into the context of this sewer villain's actions.
And it continues. There's meta-commentary about outside intervention. The text mentions Superman, the ultimate symbol of order, but then twists it. It says if Superman showed up, he'd act like Daniel Penny, stating he'd choke out the sin.
So the text is explicitly framing these charged references as part of Turdman's worldview, his form of justice.
That seems to be the intent. The text calls it justice in filth, brutal and bold. It's using these politically charged references almost as a shorthand, a narrative device, to solidify Turdman's utterly destructive outlook. His goal isn't just crime in the normal sense, it's total systemic destruction. Things like burn down the blocks, billions in sight, leading to riots, rage, and sealing their fate. He's presented as purely an agent of societal breakdown.
We should probably just pause for a second here, because even just analyzing this, reading through this level of deliberate chaos, it's demanding. What do you think the author is trying to do by mashing up extreme fictional gore with these very specific real-world trauma references?
Well, it seems like a mechanism to define the sheer scale of this villain, doesn't it? By invoking these highly charged known anxieties, the author makes sure Turdman isn't just some generic monster made of waste. He becomes a monster defined by, or perhaps birthed from, society's deepest wounds and failures. The resulting figure is positioned as completely irredeemable, utterly beyond the pale, which I think brings us right to the core juxtaposition between the two.
Okay, so let's connect the dots. Shitman and Turdman, both defined by filth, by waste. But their purposes, their functions in the narrative could not be more different.
Yeah, the divide seems to hinge on a morality versus maybe nature.
Yeah.
Shitman embodies this idea that you can clean up corruption even if you yourself are repulsive. He clings to a moral compass, however warped his methods.
Right. He's trying to fix things.
Whereas Turdman, he embodies unchained, self-serving violence, chaos for chaos's sake. The text even describes him as being unstained by the chaos he creates, which suggests the destruction doesn't damage him. It is him. It's his identity.
And we see that contrast really clearly in their vulnerabilities, don't we? Or lack thereof.
Absolutely. Shitman, the one trying, however grotesquely, to do good. He's vulnerable to a household cleaning product, air freshener. A simple domestic thing can stop his brand of justice.
It's almost pathetic, in a way.
It is. But Turdman, his resilience is depicted as something else entirely, almost supernatural. The lore describes him being physically obliterated, Turdman flattened, a smear absolute, but he instantly reforms, rise from the squash, reform in the night. It paints him as this unending, self-resurrecting force of chaos. You can flatten him, sure, but you can't actually stop him. Shipman can be neutralized by normalcy, by something clean. Turdman seems beyond that.
And you mentioned earlier the text itself seems very aware of what it's doing, forcing this confrontation on the reader.
Highly self-aware, yeah. It includes lines of meta-commentary, stating explicitly that the graphic content exists for Revid's wild art.
Revid. Is that the implied author within the text?
It seems to be, yes. The source basically tells us this whole grotesque spectacle is a deliberate artistic confrontation. It calls it the danger uncensored, and argues that the truth, no matter how ugly, is ultimately in the pile.
So it's an intentional literary choice, pushing the anti-hero concept beyond just repulsive but good-hearted like shitman into this radically provocative chaos agent Turdman by mixing the gore with those hard societal references.
Precisely. It's aiming for something far more confrontational than simple parody.
Well, that seems to bring this particular deep dive toward its conclusion. We've looked at how this source material really pushes the boundaries, from the functionally repulsive justice of Shipman to the radical, unconstrained violence and chaos that defines Turdman.
Which leaves us, and you, the listener, with a final, pretty provocative question to chew on, based on what this material presents. When a fictional world offers up one figure who is physically disgusting but holds onto a shred of morality, and another who is morally disgusting, maybe even pure evil, but is physically unstoppable, regenerating from destruction, what does that imply? What does it suggest about the only kind of justice, or maybe just the only kind of force, that's capable of surviving in the absolute darkest, filthiest fictional sewers imaginable? What thrives when the world is depicted as pure muck?